watch his speech last night? What did you think? Email us, studio2@whyy.org. You can also call 888-477-9499.
Comments already pouring in. I want to start by reading an email from Nick that sets up our first question. Nick says, I read J.D. Vance's, quote, autobiography when it first came out. The overall reaction that I had was that it simply did not ring true. It was more like yet another attempt to join the poorer-than-thou bandwagon loved by too many politicians. It's no surprise that he's been chosen as a running mate for a candidate not known for total honesty. That's Nick's perspective, and Andrew, I want to say that you set us up with that because I think a lot of people look at Vance's backstory and they kind of just don't buy it. So what is his backstory? Where's he from? And help us maybe sort truth from semi-fiction here.
Well, it's interesting. When his book came out, it was broadly received positively. There's a negative reaction it got too from people I know in Ohio that we can get into more if you want. But it's interesting that sort of the context today, which is he's obviously now a leading figure in the Republican Party versus back then, which he was basically an unknown. People are just going to kind of form different conclusions about where they think he's coming from and, you know, what his backstory is. So I can't say that I've thoroughly investigated everything in the book. I read it when it came out, but actually have not read it recently. But generally speaking, his story is that he grew up in Middletown, Ohio, which is outside of Cincinnati. It's a manufacturing center. He has family ties in eastern Kentucky, which is sort of the basis for the Appalachian mantle that he claims. And he described being raised in poverty, in sort of, I guess, lower middle class, sort of on the bleeding edge of being poor, domestic violence, his mother being an addict, being married multiple times. And when the book came out, and I'll say too that he eventually joined the military in the U.S. Marines, went to Ohio State, graduated a year summa cum laude, went to Harvard, or rather, I'm sorry, Yale Law School. It's just a real kind of bootstrap story that he has to tell. So, I mean, one of the interesting things about the Senate campaign in 2022 was that a super PAC that was supporting it published, and it's called an opposition research report, and it's essentially the kinds of research that political campaigns do on candidates to try to identify vulnerabilities and things that can be pushed to meet the running and stuff like that. And in that report, it never really punched holes in the fundamental story of his life. So I'm not saying that it's not possible that something in there is going to be found not to be true. I've not seen anything substantially like that come out in the year since it was released. Possibly the current environment with a flurry of people coming through his life with a fine term. But yeah, that's the general reaction. A lot of people, including myself, read the story, thought it was inspirational. It's interesting to me that we often see as a playbook in the politician kind of sphere that they'll release a book and people will kind of see it as a way to launch a career. But I'll say that people didn't perceive the book that way when it came out. Yeah. A lot of the focus was an interesting personal story. There was some interest among particularly kind of like more educated people in other parts of the country who wanted to understand why Donald Trump was appealing. It's hard to almost put ourselves back where we were 8 years ago, but you know, Trump really caught people by surprise in a lot of corners and how people to interpret it. So it's just, like I said, I mean, it's remarkable that the book was released in that manner. It wasn't seen as like a political manifesto or anything like that, but clearly kind of in retrospect, you can see how maybe it was one.
Yeah. I saw the film, and, you know, and this was years ago before I knew about his political trajectory, and sort of, I still wondered, how did he jump from, you know, going to Yale Law School, right, to becoming a politician, you know, known enough to be put on the ticket? What happened between the Yale Law School and now?
So I'm going to maybe miss a step or two, but after Yale, the book released. He took a job in Silicon Valley. He befriended Peter Thiel, who's a sort of right-wing entrepreneur in Silicon Valley who's helped support Vance's political career. And it really was the book that opened a lot of doors for him. I've heard over and over again stories about, I just talked to the governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, this morning, who described reading the book, being impressed by the story, and saying, I got to get this guy on the phone. There's a story about Steve Case, who's another tech entrepreneur who co-founded America Online, who read the book, called JD Vance, and hired him to run a venture capital fund that aimed to bring investment to the heartland from Silicon Valley. So just the book opened a lot of doors for him. And so when it came out, he pretty quickly started making the rounds. So the book was released in 2016, and pretty close to after the election, that November, he began making the rounds in Ohio, rubbing elbows with, important politicians. He pretty quickly started, I call it the rubber chicken circuit, but speaking at the county Republican Party function as a keynote speaker. He started a nonprofit that was focused on the opioid epidemic, but it has been perceived in retrospect as a vehicle for his political career, and there's nuance to whether or not that's true. But he started laying the groundwork and being widely speculated about in Ohio as being a future candidate for office. And then, he didn't run in 2018, although he considered it, and then he ran in 2021
and won.
And then here he is.
And got a big endorsement along the way, and a lot of people are emailing about this already.
Mm-hmm.
His relationship to Donald Trump over the years. So we want to play a compilation now. This is Vance talking about Trump over the years. Take a listen.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. He's exploiting some of the racism that's there, but he's also exploiting people's fears. I think that he's leading people in a very dark direction, and that's ultimately what worries me the most. I did say those critical things, and I regret them, and I regret being wrong about the guy. I think that he was a good president. Was the election in 2020 free and fair? Was it above board? And my answer is no. I really don't think that it was.
And Ann from Pottstown emails and says, it baffles me how someone who compared Trump to Hitler, which I believe was in a text message exchange, compared Trump to Hitler could now be his running mate. So many other never Trump politicians have gone to the dark side. Bernie agrees. Bernie says Vance got it right when he described Trump as America's Hitler.